The only difference between sitting in the truck stop and going down the road is the price of fuel. Alright, let's try this. Alright, I thought I'd talk some more about the money. I know I was going to talk about trucks and what kind of truck you should get and leasing and everything, but I think people are more interested in the money. So, where we left off last time was $1.50 a mile per mile for every mile you put on your truck. Deadhead, going to the house, every mile you put on a truck, you need to average about $1.50 per mile. So, I wanted to touch on a couple things because people get hung up. I see a lot of new young owner-operators, they get hung up on the rate per mile and the deadhead miles. That, oh, I'm not going to deadhead more than 100 miles to go get a load, or the rate per mile is too cheap, I'm not going to do it. They think every load's going to pay $2 a mile. Every load doesn't pay $2 a mile. So I wanted to kind of explain my thinking or my theory on that, you know, instead of breaking it down by per mile, hey, I'm not going to haul anything less per mile, start breaking it down by, I need to make X amount of dollars per day. And I'll go back to our list here of our expenses. And like I said, these are rough estimate. You got your truck, trailer, fuel, maintenance, and yourself. That all comes out to $13,500. Rough estimate. So, and like we said, you want to average $1.50 a mile, which I think is very obtainable. And you want to do about 10,000 miles a month. Too many miles for me, but you can do 10,000 mile a month. Easy, not too bad. Works out to $15,000 a month gross. So, the thing that guys get hung up with is that they want a rate per mile, or I'm not going to deadhead. But if you break it down to, you want to do 10,000 miles a month, 30 days in a month, that's 333 miles, 0.3333, blah, blah, blah. So we'll say 333 miles a day average for 10,000 miles a month. So that works out to $1.50 a day, $1.50 per mile times 333 equals $500 a day. So that's your goal, is to make $500 a day, 30 days a month. So, guys get hung up on, well, I'm not going to go deadhead and get a load. Well, when you're sitting in the truck stop, and what did I do with it? When you're sitting in the truck stop, right here, there it is. These expenses don't stop. Meaning, your truck payment, your trailer payment, and your maintenance, and you got to pay yourself. These expenses don't stop when you're sitting. The only expense that stops when you're sitting in the truck stop is the fuel. And I always say the difference between sitting in the truck stop and going down the road is the price of fuel. That's the only difference. So when you're driving down the road, the only extra expense that you have driving down the road is your cost of fuel. All your other expenses are still clicking away every day. So if you break down all your bills to a monthly amount, like I did here, your truck payment, trailer payment, your maintenance, because you still got to maintain your truck. No matter if you drive 7,000 miles or 10,000 miles, you still have your maintenance. And you got to pay yourself. You still got your house payment and everything else. So that works out. The only thing missing out of here is fuel. So that works out to $8,700 a month. Divide by 30, $290 a day. So that's how much it cost you per day, 30 days a month, is $290 a day. That includes your truck payment, your trailer payment, your maintenance, and paying yourself. So your goal at a bare minimum is to make $300 a day, $290 a day. So the only difference between sitting in the truck stop and going down the road is the price of fuel. You still have those daily bills rolling every day. So when you decide, hey, I'm going to sit in the truck stop over the weekend and wait for this load because it pays, 5 cents per mile more, well, because you sat in the truck stop, that clock is still ticking. So your daily rate is still going on, $290 a day. That's $580 come Monday morning that you need to make to pay for the last 2 days that you sat in the truck stop. Now, I know that it sounds weird and it's an odd way of thinking about it, but that's how I think about it. And my coordinator, shout out to my coordinator because she knows who she is. She watches these. So my coordinator, I tell her, hey, I want to make $500 a day. No matter how I do it, I want to make $500 a day. That's kind of my minimum. So I'm going to give you an example. When I talked to you last time, I was doing that load from Kentucky to El Paso back to Kentucky. I just delivered that load this morning in Kentucky. Freight's been really slow this week. It's been really hit and miss. And where I was in Kentucky, I thought, I'd do a lot better finding a load. Nothing was hitting. My coordinator, she calls me yesterday afternoon and says, hey, Dan, what are you going to do? There's no loads. What do you want to do? She says, I know you don't want to sit over the weekend. I said, no, I need to make something over the weekend. And that's why I say that click is always, that clock is always ticking. The cash register every day wants $290. $290. So if you're sitting in the truck stop or you say, hey, I don't want to go do this, that cash register is still going around. So she says, so we start looking further out. I got offered a load going to North Carolina. Paid okay, but North Carolina's a bad spot. But deadhead was really low. It was like 70 miles, 50, 60 miles deadhead to go get it, which would have been fine with me. Go to North Carolina, get to North Carolina, we'll figure it out from there. Luckily, that load canceled. And I say luckily because it wasn't my first choice to do, but that was the only thing going on. And right as it canceled, she says, hey, they just popped a load in out of Cincinnati going to Michigan. I said, really? It pays $2.80 a mile. So that load, but let's see, here we go. So this is my first load, Kentucky to Texas. I had 0 deadhead to go pick it up. My second load, Texas to Kentucky. I only paid $1.20 a mile. It was dirt cheap. Okay? I delivered in Kentucky today. And I'm sitting up here by Cincinnati, Ohio right now. It was a 150-mile deadhead to go get this load. But it's only going 335 miles, Ohio to Michigan. A lot of guys look at that and go, oh, hell no, I'm not going to do that. Look at this. It pays $2.80 a mile. A total of, and I rounded it up, that's why I crossed that line through there, $940. $940 to go 335 miles. I have 335 miles worth of fuel in my truck. So I ain't got to buy no fuel. So you look at this deadhead, a lot of guys see that deadhead and go, man, I'm not going to do that. Why am I going to go deadhead? But you look at that and you say, man, wait a minute. I can go get that and still come out ahead going to Michigan. And I know when I go to Michigan, I can do okay. As soon as I took it, I told her what I wanted. Bam, 5 minutes, it pops in the computer. She says, hey, you just got offered a load, Michigan back down to Kentucky. And I knew exactly what it was, where it was. 70-mile deadhead to go get it. So this trip is kind of a funny trip because the holiday weekend. So I took 2 days out for the weekend. So we're looking at 12, 13 days. 12, 13 days, total trip when I deliver this on Tuesday. And I know you're not supposed to count your chickens before they hatch. But anyway, on Tuesday, I will have driven a total of 4,000 miles. I would have grossed a total of $6,408 for 4,000 miles, which averages out to $1.60 a mile. So that goes back to what I said, $1.50 a mile is your goal. So when you have that truck payment, when you have that trailer payment, and you have that maintenance, and you have your own personal bills, if you stop and break those down to a daily amount, it'll give you an idea. I got to make this much money every day. And you don't get too hung up on the rate per mile, or I'm going to deadhead, or I'm not going to deadhead. You know, I see a lot of guys that, man, I'm not going to deadhead 150 miles. Well, at my company, Mercer, they enter all that into the computer, and, you know, if you tell your coordinator, hey, I'm not going to deadhead more than 100 miles, well, they won't offer you anything that's more than 100 miles away. Well, there could be a load 105 miles away, but you're not going to see it because you said, I don't want to deadhead more than 100 miles. Or you said, I'm not going to haul it for less than, let's say, $1.90 a mile. And, you know, guys kind of get fascinated with these figures. And the main thing you want to look at as owner-operator at the end, is at the end of the month, you want to look at your miles. You can't look at every single load as this is how much I want to make. You got to start looking at the big picture. So you look at weekly, you look at monthly, you can look at quarterly, every 3 months, and then you could look at yearly. So you might have a period in there where you might dip down below $1.50 a mile, but then, you know, summertime, freight's good, starts picking back up, and you're going to dip back up to $1.65. Well, at the end of the picture, at the end of the month, end of the year, you look and you go, oh, you know what? I did okay. So you can't get fixated on just a certain amount, or I'm not going to deadhead to go get a load. As you can see, this load here, I really don't know why it pays so good, but that's a pretty damn good load, paying $2.80 a mile, $900 and something to go 330 miles. Now, it has a 6-foot tarp, has to be tarped, and it picks up on a Saturday, which I don't care. I'm out here to work. I don't care what day of the week it is. I'll work. So, you know, back to tarping. If you're doing a flatbed, you know, if you're not going to tarp, me personally, I really don't think why you're doing a flatbed, because that's how you make your money. The more work you're willing to do, the more money you're going to make. Now, if you sit around and say, I'm not going to tarp, I'm not going to do that, you know, you're not going to believe me. There's a lot of people that don't want to do that, but there's not that many people that really like tarping. I don't like tarping. I look at it as an exercise, but it gives you that little advantage if you're willing to do that. And as you can see, you know, a lot of people, that particular load that paid $2.80 a mile going up to Michigan, that load did not hit a lot of people's radars because it's short. It's only 330 miles. A lot of guys say, well, I don't want to do anything that's less than 500 miles. It requires 6-foot tarps. A lot of guys say, well, I'm not going to tarp. And then the deadhead. Now, there could have been another guy closer, but, you know, when at Mercer, when you tell your coordinator, this is what I want to do and what I don't, and that's one reason why I like Mercer, is because you can be very specific about, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, I don't want to do that, and they don't care. They'll say, fine, no problem. Pop, 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 pop. They punch it in the computer, bam, you get the loads that match what you want to do. So when you narrow that window down, you know, that's that much less loads. And when times are tough, like right now, you know, freight's really weird right now. It's kind of slow. Right now, you know, you can't be so selective. You got to open it up a little bit and be willing to kind of, you know, go with the flow. It'll all work out in the end. But, all right, I don't want to make this too long. What I did want to say, though, is, you know, don't get hung up on rate per mile. You know, be aware of what you're making per mile. Don't get hung up on the deadhead. I deadhead a lot, but on the other side, though, my expenses are way down. But you want to keep moving. You got to, as long as you keep moving, you'll make money. It's when you say, I'm not going to do that, I'm going to sit in this truck stop for a day or 2 or 3 to wait for a load, that cash register is still clicking away. And like we averaged out $280 a day. So, you know, that's why you got to keep moving, and don't get hung up on the rate per mile or the deadhead. Start thinking about, can I make this much money a day? I haul a lot of loads that are less than 100 miles, but some of them pay $500-600. A lot of guys won't do that because they're like, Why do I want to haul load? That's $500 for 100 miles. You know, if I did that 5 times a week, do you know how happy I would be? I don't understand why guys don't want to do loads like that, because you know that is so much profit. You know, there are guys that no, that's too much work. You know, all they want to do is drive from coast to coast, back and forth. I'm about making how much money I can make per day. That is my goal. So if you get stuck on per mile and you're only doing 100 miles a day, yeah, it looks like you're not making any money. But if you look at it, how much money am I making per day compared to your miles, then you know, a lot of times I don't drive more than 1,500 miles a week, but I do pretty good. You know, I don't do $1.50 a mile for 1,500 miles. You know, so you know, don't get stuck on the per rate per mile, or don't get stuck on I don't want a deadhead. And if you're doing flatbed, you need to tarp. You know, you got to do the hard stuff. That's where the money's at. So anyway, I know the last video I said I was going to talk about trucks, but I wanted to talk about money. I saw somebody else on YouTube, they put a video up about money, and some of the numbers he was throwing out there I really thought were unrealistic. And like I said, I'm trying to be as honest as I can with you, and this is just my way of doing it. It's worked great for me. So anyway, I'm gonna end it now. I'll see if I can do another video today about the trucks. So anyway, I'm gonna end it now, and I hope this helps. I hope I didn't confuse too many people too much, but like I said, that's the formula that I use to make money. It works for me. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope this helped, and I'll talk to you later.